Perhaps no state or nation in all the history of man has been the deciding ground of so many human issues as has the state of Pennsylvania. Decisions that founded and assured survival of a great nation, that brought into being important colonization movements, that established freedom of worship in America, that founded great religions, that gave birth to America's educational system, that launched tremendous industrial empires, that forged the steel sinews and powered the driving wheels of today's great civilization. From matters of world influence to matters of where one man or one family shall work, live, or even spend its vacation, Pennsylvania is a deciding factor more often than any other state. No wonder that almost from its beginning, it has been called the Keystone State. There are, of course, many sound reasons for this situation. Strategically, Pennsylvania was the geographical key of the original 13 colonies. Her geography hasn't changed. She's still a strategic key to the United States, with one of the greatest seaports in the world open to the Atlantic on the east, and across her wooded hills to the west lies the actual gateway to the very heart of the vast resources of America. Within Pennsylvania's borders live more than 10 million people, and within a radius of 500 miles live 60 million more. With the buying power of those 70 million people, Pennsylvania is the heart of the most concentrated and profitable consuming market in the world, for food and for manufactured goods. Here also are enough people to cast the key vote on the future of this nation, and probably the whole world. Here is where things happen, where decisions are made, where industry is making the greatest strides of any state or nation in the world, where people are living, working, getting their education, attending their churches, spending their leisure, and where countless thousands of their neighbors also decide each year to come and enjoy the quiet, peaceful beauty of Pennsylvania rivers and lakes, her forests, the flaming, fantastically beautiful color of autumn, and the vibrant life of her children and her people. Pennsylvania, land of decision for America, for American industry, and for American families. Every bend in every road in Pennsylvania offers you a glimpse of history. Everywhere you see roadside markers, some 1,500 of them, placed by the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, that you, the traveler, always thoroughly enjoying the present, may be ever aware also that here is where American history had much of its beginnings. These markers and this always present aura of historical significance makes every trip through Pennsylvania an even more deeply pleasurable and satisfying experience. It was in 1682 that young William Penn first set foot on Pennsylvania soil. Soon afterward, he began building this home in which he often lived while in America. Today, as you enter the estate, a marker proclaims its simple message: Pennsbury, built in 1683 to 1700, and you know you're on the hallowed grounds of history. The home is one of the hundreds of historical shrines which the visitor can see and enjoy during a trip to Pennsylvania. As one walks over the grounds, stands, looks, and wonders, it seems easy to imagine the time William Penn must have stood on the same spot, looked out over the same broad waters of the Delaware, and perhaps tried to imagine what Pennsylvania would be like 300 years after his time. It is a matter of history that Penn wanted to call this land Sylvania because of its great beauty and rich lands. And from the beginning, the soil of the rich valleys and the level lands offered the great appeal to Penn and his settlers. Agriculture was to be the mainstay of the settlements and the basis of trade. Today, agriculture is still one of the very great economic factors in Pennsylvania, with a more than $2 billion investment. In this state, noted as one of the two greatest industrial states of the nation, agricultural worth is greater than the capital investment in either mining or the manufacture of primary metals. A tremendous record. Here, a great variety of products are raised, due to the fact that farmland ranges in elevation from sea level to approximately 3,000 feet. Fruits, vegetables, grains, tobacco, corn, etc. are found in great abundance. Our photographer stopped alongside the road at a fruit stand, and here was graphic evidence of the productivity of Pennsylvania's fertile farms. Everything rich in color, exceptional in quality, luscious in taste, and a delight to look at even before eating. Pennsylvania is full of pleasant surprises for the traveler as he drives the highway network of the state. Typical is this discovery down in Chester County near the southeastern border. In a small pinpoint area some 10 miles across is grown 90% of all the mushrooms produced in the United States. The industry, begun by one man a few years ago, is typical of the imagination and vision of Pennsylvania people, who from the beginning have been responsible for so many of the firsts and most importants in the United States. Also a delightful surprise in Pennsylvania is the grape industry up in the northwest corner near Lake Erie. Here in the sandy soil which spreads back from the shore are to be found thousands of acres of vineyards tended by the industrious peoples whose ancestors founded the area years ago. The luscious fruit hangs like blue walls on the wire trellises and produces some of the highest quality and best known wines and grape juices in the world. Another pleasant experience you may encounter as you motor along the roads is the portable grocery store, common to some of the backcountry in Pennsylvania. And as you watch the grocer selling his wares to the folk who come to buy, you are again impressed that here in Pennsylvania you find that delightful combination of the most modern and highly industrialized trade patterns in the world, flavored with just enough of the plain, simple holdovers from history to make the state a great and pleasant surprise at every turn of the road. History. Yes, it was in 1732 that another important chapter in Pennsylvania's history was written. Like so many others in those early years, Conrad Beissel came to the New World to take advantage of the freedom of worship granted under William Penn's Great Law. Beissel established the Ephrata Cloister, a community of Seventh-day Baptists, and for 200 years the brotherhood and sisterhood flourished under monastic rules of conduct that required rigid self-denial and self-discipline. These buildings were constructed in 1735 and served as a hospital during the Revolution. Today, the place is maintained and administered by the Commonwealth, and upon your visit there, you may be shown through the buildings by one of the 9 remaining actual descendants of the old order. In the meeting room of this building, the guide explains that 2-hour sermons were always preached here by the brothers. The hourglass had to empty twice before the sermon ended. While the men and boys sat on the plain board benches on one side of the room, and the women and girls sat on the equally hard benches facing them. And as you go from room to room, climbing the ancient stairs, looking at the old spinning wheels, the fireplaces, the pages of history seem to weigh upon you. We believed people should learn the humility of bended knees, says the guide simply, so we taught them to do it even in sleep. Here are the beds, just narrow boards and too short to stretch out on full length, and little blocks of wood for pillows. We also believe people should learn to bow their heads, he says again, so the doors were made low enough to teach them to bow. There is pride in the man's voice. Many religious orders, movements, churches, and denominations have had historic background in Pennsylvania. The Quakers, the Dunkards, the Mennonites, the Amish, the Moravians, and many other individual and well-known groups whose names and activities are recorded on Pennsylvania's pages of history. Today, Pennsylvania has more churches than any other state and is proud of such contribution to the philosophy of living by so many of her thrifty peoples. Pennsylvania believes that any successful state must be built upon her people, that good living conditions make good markets, that a satisfied populace enjoying their homes, their places of work, their recreational surroundings, their cultural opportunities, and a pride and loyalty for the state in which they live, form the actual foundation upon which may be built successful industries, progressive communities, and leadership. Therefore, Pennsylvania is deeply concerned with her homes, her churches, her schools, her historic shrines, her cultural treasures, her public health programs, and her great array of forests, woods, scenic streams, plunging waterfalls, resorts, and recreational facilities. Pennsylvania has more accredited colleges and universities than any other state. More owner-occupied homes than any other state. More small towns and small cities, and more people living in small towns than any other state, as well as some of the greatest cities in the world. All this is why Pennsylvania is truly a land of decision for families who want a wonderful place to live and work, and to enjoy the richness of leisure with nearby secure employment. It is also one of the great reasons why Pennsylvania is a land of decision for business and industry, where small towns offer low-tax locations for plants with a ready pool of workers near at hand, and tremendous markets within profitable shipping distances of the plants themselves. It was in 1742 that one of the great decisions of modern times was made in Pennsylvania. Peter Grubb decided to build a charcoal furnace at Cornwall for the smelting of iron ore taken from Cornwall banks a few hundred yards away. Cannon and shot for the Revolutionary War were made here, and legend has it that Washington and Lafayette visited the ore banks personally to look over this source of heavy war materiel. Here, then, was the real beginning of the gigantic steel industry for which Pennsylvania and the United States are famous. Cornwall ore banks has been mined continuously for more than 200 years and is still the greatest iron ore deposit east of the Great Lakes. Steel. Perhaps no one factor has been of greater importance in the forward march of American progress than Pennsylvania steel. Steel for great buildings, steel for bridges, steel for motor cars, steel for trains and for rails, steel for planes, steel for the guns of war and the machinery of peace, for farms and 1,001 peacetime uses. Steel, one of the most basic commodities of the world today, and it had its humble beginnings in a little town nestled between the green hills of Pennsylvania. And along with steel is coal, one a basic complement of the other. And under Pennsylvania's green hills lies one of the greatest coal deposits known, both anthracite and bituminous. Pennsylvania produces more coal than any other state, and in many places the veins lie so close to the surface the mining is done with the strip method. Giant shovels dig it from the pit, hoist it up to a pile where a smaller shovel loads it into the trucks that haul it away for cleaning and processing. Shaft mining is also common in Pennsylvania, and coal is brought from deep beneath the ground to add to the wealth of fuel for homes and industry throughout the nation. And as coal fires the great furnaces of the coke and steel industry, it also feeds the fires necessary to thousands of other types of business and commerce. Along every stream and in every little valley nestle small towns and cities that support industries, hundreds of them, thousands of them. In fact, there seems no end to them. Everything from toothpicks, watch springs, blown glass, and nylon hosiery to diesel engines, automobiles, and fabricated blocks of metal weighing hundreds of tons. Pennsylvania also produces more cement than any other state. In fact, the industry was born here in the Lehigh Valley, where David O. Saylor first made Portland cement in 1871. So building materials of all kinds besides steel continued to pour out of Pennsylvania to build homes and churches and schools and businesses in all parts of the state and nation. Electric power is another basic commodity in a state so heavily populated and industrialized as Pennsylvania, and here there is an abundance of it. From great dams strategically placed in the larger rivers, and from giant generators located in all major areas of the state, the power flows in endless streams across the green hills to cities and towns, and to the machines it turns, to the buildings it lights, to the homes and schools it so well supplies. And it is only fitting that there should be such great supplies of it in the state where Benjamin Franklin first brought it from the skies with his kite and key. For like the sparks of fire that first came from Franklin's experiment, from here too came many of the sparks that eventually lighted the torch of liberty for America, and from her to so many other countries in the world. Valley Forge, Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, the Declaration of Independence, and in the bitter cold of Christmas night of that fateful year, 1776, came what some historians claim to be the turning point of the War for Independence. For Washington crossed the Delaware and took the mercenaries at Trenton by surprise. Here indeed is the glory of history, the indomitable spirit of America, and it happened in Pennsylvania. The painting is here, the river is here, and the same ground is here, but it doesn't look as it did that night in 1776. And the Delaware, with its waters put to so many uses, so many places in the long miles above this point, doesn't look like a formidable stream now, but the record of that heroic night will never die in America. 83 years after Washington crossed the Delaware, another decisive event for civilization took place in Pennsylvania. Edwin L. Drake decided to drill an oil well here in the northwestern corner of the state, not far from Titusville. The well was called Drake's Folly because few people believed the foul-odored stuff that seeped out into Oil Creek would be of any commercial value, even if Drake found a quantity of it. But Drake drilled. He was a man of both vision and decision, and his well gave birth to an industry which today employs more than 2 million people, consists of more than 40,000 companies, has a capital investment of more than $40 billion, and an annual retail income of more than $20 billion. It is the fourth largest industry in America, and because of it, planes streak across the world in a few hours. great trains travel at speeds above 100 miles an hour. More than 45 million cars travel a network of highways in the United States that staggers most people's imagination. And all because Edwin L. Drake drilled a well in Pennsylvania that most people said was folly. Yes, Pennsylvania is a land of great decision. And while we're talking of decision and history, there was another in Pennsylvania which is written across the heart of every American child, every man and every woman who is loyal to this country in which they live. Gettysburg.
But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
No American should miss the chance to stand for a few moments on the hallowed ground of Gettysburg. After all is said of the industrial might of Pennsylvania, the opportunities for profit, for plants, for a place to work, the greatest appeal of the state to the greatest number of people is still to be found in the thrill of a visit to or a vacation in this land of beauty, fun, and history. On October 1st, 1940, the Pennsylvania Turnpike, the nation's first great superhighway, was opened to the public. And since that time, year after year, the flow of visitors increases. They come in search of relaxation, pleasure, and beautiful things to see. And here in Pennsylvania, they find them. State parks, state forests, and the Allegheny National Forest are a constant invitation to pleasure and enjoyment. Waterfalls abound in picturesque settings to delight the visitor and the camera enthusiast. View spots attract thousands each year, and they stand looking out over the gorges, the valleys, the rivers, the forests, drinking in the beauty of nature and the thrill of high places. More than 52% of Pennsylvania is forest land, dotted with beautiful lakes, streams, mountains, and resorts. Travel and recreation business in Pennsylvania totaled more than $900 million last year, and still it continues to increase. Hunting and fishing is excellent in the state, with more than 1 million people spending $200 million on hunting alone. At almost every bend in the road along the rivers, you will find fishermen. And the thrill of a fighting fish on the line is unlike any other thrill in the world. Unless you finally lose him. And even then, the feeling is still unlike anything else in the world. And in addition to these sports, there are an almost endless list of others. Hiking, boating, golf, swimming. Ah, yes, swimming. A sport for everyone, from the youngest to the oldest. From those who like the water to those who just like to sit or look. But probably the most spectacular attraction of all is the beauty of Pennsylvania's trees when autumn turns the hills to breathtaking riots of color and delight. Photography is poor substitute for a first-hand look, for you miss the tangy freshness of the autumn air, the fascinating odors of woods in the fall. Here indeed is a photographer's and a vacationer's paradise. Everywhere is beauty. And when you stop to think that back in the days of William Penn, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Peter Grubb, Edwin L. Drake, Abraham Lincoln, and hosts of others, that these woods were just as beautiful as they are now, you begin to understand why so many millions of people have chosen Pennsylvania as their home, as the place for their factories, as the place for their vacations. Pennsylvania, land of beauty, land of history, land of decision, for America, for American industry, and for American families everywhere.